Our panelists for today. So I will read your very colorful bios if you don't mind, don't be shy. So we will have three representatives, not representatives, but basically people who are very well-versed in the academia in Malaysia, having worked in it for a few, some decades, a few years also. So I will first welcome Prof. Sharifah Munirah Alatas. Please have a seat here, Prof. Okay, what I know most about Prof is that she was a lecturer for how many years? 3 decades, Prof, in UKM? Two decades in UKM, and you were also former Deputy Director and Principal Research Fellow at the Alliance Centre for Governance, University Malaya, and then previously Visiting Professor at the Faculty of Social Sciences, Indonesia International Islamic University. So many years, both in Malaysia and outside of Malaysia as well. And then you were educated in America. So you're both MA and doctorate from Columbia. And BA is, oh yes, Oregon, yes, Oregon. All right, your scholarly interests focus on decolonial thought, geopolitics, foreign policy, non-Western international relations theory, and autonomous social science traditions. So obviously a public intellectual. I remember 2 years ago, I attended an event, I think, in the Cube, UM. And then I remember you mentioned, as scholars, it's not enough for us to be stuck in the Ivory Tower, we must also be scholar activists. And then my first year PhD heart went, oh really? so since 2 years ago, I hope I have improved in that regard, that I am a little bit of an activist, cowardly or otherwise. All right, so thank you for being here, Prof. Munirah. And second, I would like to welcome Dr. Muhammad Adli to the stage. So he is an academic serving in University Islam Antarabangsa. So Dr. Adli, how long have you been in UIA? 10 years? 10 years already, okay, 10 years already. So his PhD thesis explores the extent to which the practices of Islamic banks in Malaysia reflect Islamic ethical norms in business and finance. And then you have also co-authored a few books on finance. Can I also mention that he also served in the Ministry of Education from 2018 to 2020. Therefore, I feel like you are also coming in from a policy point of view. Can I also? Yes, all right. From a policy point of view and a lived experience as an academic and a student as well. So thank you so much, Dr. Adli, for being here. Do you prefer Adli or Dr. Adli? Okay, all right, okay. Thank you so much. And then the third one is Dr. Sarah. Okay, please come to the stage, Dr. Sarah. Okay, everyone, I must also declare my conflict of interest. Sarah is my personal friend, in case if I'm nicer. All right, so Dr. Sarah, I think I should also, I think the main highlight about Sarah is that she has written a memoir titled The Illusions of Freedom. Do you have a copy with you? It's downstairs. So it should be somewhere downstairs. So it is a memoir of her experience being a PhD student in a private university in Malaysia. So please have a read, because I think it really showcases the reality of how difficult it can be just pursuing research in Malaysia, no matter how earnest your intentions were from the beginning. And I think your experience as written in the book can really be read alongside the Ivory Tower Reform book that we are launching today. Okay, but before that, so she is currently working in Sunway University, a senior lecturer, and then prior to joining Sunway University, she taught at the University of Lincoln, United Kingdom, and Taylor's University, Malaysia. So she has earned her academic degrees in both the UK and Malaysia, and she focuses on the politics of tourism and how colonial and neo-colonial structures continue to shape tourism, sustainable development discourses, and then other systems as well. So yeah, so we have three very experienced academic coming from different angles, different expertise. So I believe that we will have a very rich discussion today. Please be prepared with your questions. We are already thinking about some right now. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to leave the questions to the final part of the panel discussion. But before we start, I will hand over the microphone to Prof. Munirah.
Thank you, Ruby. Very energetic announcement, introduction. I'm pleased to see so many familiar faces, including members of my family. Thank you for coming. All right, I'd like to first start with a few words of thanks and acknowledgement. First of all, to my co-editors, Adli, and a third who is not able to be here because she's from Penang, No Shoshi. She's teaching at the University of Science, USM. I'd like to thank them for their putting up with me. I'm very pedantic and actually almost neurotic about order. So they put up with me for a long time, about 1 year. We've been working on this book. And especially also the technicalities of it. Thank you. Also to Pak Chong and his team here at Gerak Budaya. It's been very pleasant experience. Very stress-free. I didn't encounter any problems, inefficiencies, and what have you, which I'm so used to at the university level. Also to Noor Azima, who yes, she's here. Thank you so much for obliging and writing the foreword. Noor Azima is the chair of the Parent Action Group for Education. She's her battles are similar to ours, and the foreword that she wrote is very linked to the problems that we are facing in the higher education. She brought that link actually very poignantly to, in terms of the problems the arrows point both ways. So thank you, Azima. And of course, last but not least, my thanks our thanks goes out to the past and present members of Gerak and the EXCOs. We have a representative here, Encik Rosli. Thank you for coming. We are all members of Gerak, the Pergerakan Tenaga Academic Malaysia. And it is because of our hard work, our reflection on the problems that our universities have gone through or are still going through, that this book has materialized. But a little more about the book. Let me just run by a few minutes about how it started. Sometime the beginning of last year, I became the chair of Gerak, and I mooted the idea of publishing a book. And the EXCO then was very amenable to that. So there were about 5 of us who initially had got on board, but because of the pressures of teaching, 2 had declined and dropped out. So now we have 3. Publish or perish is really it's real, but Adli is still in it, as Joshi, who is not here, is also still an academic. I'm the retired one, so I don't have to publish, and I'll perish in other ways, but not because of the university. So I mooted the idea, everyone was amenable, and we started. But the reason behind my wanting to do this is because I can give you 8 reasons, okay? The first reason was to register that apart from student activism, which we are very familiar with in the country, going back to the 1940s, we're very familiar with works being done on student activism in Malaysia. There's not a lot written about in terms of academics, current educators or past educators who have systematically involved themselves in activism. There are articles written here and there, but there's no specific volume dedicated to lecturers who have systematically fought against the system. When I say fight, I meant comment about the problems in universities. I can safely say that Gerak, as an NGO, pioneered the movement of educators in public universities. And I thought it would be a good idea to articulate and gather all our past statements and expand on it in terms of added commentary. And by the way, if you do buy the book, the footnotes are also very important additions to the book because it explains, it contextualizes, it also adds on related academic references. I would say that our book is a semi-academic production, but the commentaries add to its academic or scholarly worth, I would say. So another reason is to remind Malaysians that Gerak was at the forefront, and I hope it continues because there's a lot of potential in this movement, although we can discuss later whether I'm being naive or not as to whether reforms will take place. Now, the other important reason for the book is for the message is to advocate for more activism, scholar activism, meaning I don't mean going out on the street and carrying placards. What I mean is, and what actually the message in the book that we are trying to convey is that whether you are a retired scholar or a currently serving academic, the point is to constantly make a link between your work, your job as an academic, and the problems that you see outside of the university in society. That link is hardly being made. And as an academic myself, for 20 years in a public university, there is a lack of interest, completely oblivious to what is going on outside the Ivory Tower, probably due to fear, but a lot of it is due to apathy and just can't be bothered. So the book is an attempt to say that you must be bothered, and your fear, although justified to some extent, is not 100% justified, because I'm surviving. I have not been arrested. I may not have achieved what I hoped I would achieve, but it never ends. Your ambition never ends. I'm still trying to achieve what I need to achieve. So one has to work around the system. And that's the message of the book, is that don't give up, don't be apathetic or lazy. Many academics today in the public system are lazy. There's no reason to. If you are interested in the problems, you will find a way. So it's an excuse to say that there's ALCU there, therefore we are tied. There's Act 605, we are tied. We can't say anything, we can't do anything. Well, I did it. And Adli is continuing to do it, I think. We'll know more later, the next 10 years. Another reason for the book, I won't go through all 8 reasons, but this is a very important reason. The book is meant to highlight the mediocrity that persists in the system. Mediocrity in the universities. I'm speaking about public universities, but probably, Sarah, you can add on later if it exists in the private system. I'm sure it does. But mediocrity and the prevailing feeling of pride that we are mediocre. Yeah, trust me, there is this prevailing feeling proud that, well, you know, we are mediocre, so what? That's always this tendency to compare yourselves with other mediocre entities. But there's a lot of discussion about that. There's also a lot of discussion in the book about how there is not enough outrage against academic dishonesty. There's a lot of rhetoric about how we must tackle academic dishonesty, plagiarism, but it's rhetoric. And when you are in the system, as I have been, I did not leave it. I stuck it out and I was miserable, unhappy, depressed a lot of times. But it was a good 21 years of data gathering. Because I have the data now, the proof. I've lived it. It's my lived experience about the mediocrity around me, including tendencies of racism. At meetings, I've heard about it. I've heard comments about certain foreign students, the kind of narratives that are used. So there is this prevailing toxicity in universities. But on the other hand, we are told, you know, we want to be an excellent university. We want to publish excellent works. We need to attract foreign students. So there's this complete disregard for whether we will be able to achieve it or not, because we are basically a very mediocre lot, and there's no attempt to improve. But let us move on to I would like to talk about the commentaries. First of all, I missed out. The dedication of the book is by one of our Gerak members, Wan Manan. He wrote it after I approached him, because what was significant was that the introduction of the book was conceptualized on the day that the late Professor Syed Hussein Ali passed away. And incidentally, he passed away on my brother's birthday, on June 29th last year. It was a day when actually the book is a joint effort, but the introduction itself, I had sat down to pen, and I'd actually written about 3 to 4 pages of it. And then the news came that he had passed away. So I was still in the process of conceptualizing the entire book, and I'd actually sat down to write a few pages of the introduction. So for me, this is it's significant, because he is actually considered Malaysia's first scholar activist, I would say. He himself was involved very actively in the 1970s. I think we all know about Baling. He was arrested alongside our student activist then, who is now our Prime Minister. So it's very significant. One more thing, I would like to actually, maybe I'll say the rest during the there's a lot I want to say, but first of all, one more point. I would like to mention that this is not a book that basically is forever criticizing everything. All right, I'm fed up with that as well. You get it all over social media, WhatsApp groups. There's an endless barrage of criticizing what is wrong, but no solutions as to how to improve it. I'm not saying, none of us, the three of us, are not saying that we have the solutions, because education is not a quick fix, especially in the context of Malaysia. We have problems with the way we conceptualize education, how we conceptualize progress, how we conceptualize excellence, and how we are imitative of these concepts that come from outside. So we have a lot of work to do. But I would say that we have started with this book, we have started a query into how to get the rest of the university educators to take part in the conversation. I don't know if it will work, but I'm here, I'm staying on to continue the conversation, however long it takes. It may take 10 years, it may take, I may not live to see it taking place, but the conversation has to begin. And with this book, I think we should start the conversation. I think that's all I will.
Thank you so much, Prof. I'm sorry, but Shu just sent me a message. Owners of VBQ3544 and BGT8634, please kindly remove your car because I'm sure it's blocking somebody else's car. Okay, thank you so much, Prof. Munirah. I think that really sets the stage for our discussion today. And I just recall my innocent 9 years in UITM, because before I pursued literature seriously, I was a law student. And half of the students of law actually wanted to do something else. But before because we were good in English, parents who were also perpetrators of this very one-dimensional education in Malaysia. If you're good in English, law. If you can draw, architecture. If you can count, accountancy. And things like that. But I remember in UITM, the purpose of UITM I think still is to produce industry-ready professionals, productive citizens of society. And I remember, if that is the purpose, and if I don't relate to it, and what does industry mean, then that really denies a lot of fields of social sciences and humanities. But then the thing is, we're talking about one of the biggest, not the biggest university in Malaysia, to have such a, I would say, capitalistic purpose in creating work-ready students, almost like a factory to produce workers. So my first question for all three of you would be, what is the purpose of university? And I would then compartmentalize it into what do you think a university should, what do you think should be the purpose of a university? And what is the reality that you see? So the reality that you see can be informed by your own personal experience as a student or as an academic, either public or private. So what is the reality that you see? So we can start maybe by maybe with Adli. Adli, you start first. Yes.
Thank you. Since I'm the odd one out on stage today, normally it's Manel. We have an all-male panel, which becomes an issue. But today I'm the odd one out, thorn among the roses. Anyway, yeah, the whole idea of university, why university is there, what is the purpose of higher education? I think Ruby mentioned a good point. Some people or most policymakers would think that universities are there to produce graduates for the job market. And this is where all capitalism, capitalism comes into play, etc., etc. And that's why we have all these issues with graduate employability as well, GE, yeah, which becomes part of the KPI of universities to make sure that their graduates are employable. So I do agree with Ruby to a certain extent that that is indeed a problem, yeah. So what happens to students from, you mentioned the social sciences, yeah, who are not deemed to be professionals, they are not engineers, they're not scientists. What do you do with them, yeah, and what happens to them? At the end of the day, I think the university is there to provide a space to satisfy intellectual curiosity and also to advance research in various areas, yeah. I think that is the main purpose of higher education in a sense. It's not just to satisfy the job market for national growth, etc., etc. That indeed is perhaps one of the reasons universities are there. Because we can't deny the fact that we have to produce graduates, yeah, to meet the demands of the market. But at the same time, universities also has to play a higher or better, a greater role, a greater good, yeah, as public institutions because they are funded by the government, in terms of public universities. So they have to advance what you call it, social good, bring about social benefits. And hopefully universities are the place where we can nurture minds who are inquisitive, who are critical, yeah. I always tell my students, because I teach boarding courses such as Introduction to Quran, Introduction to Hadith, most of my students are human sciences students. So I come from that background. And some of them complain, why do I have to, study these courses? Because it's part of their, course, what do you call it? Course requirements. Students at IIUm, the human sciences students, they have to take some religious courses. Anyway, I try to make the course as interesting as possible. At the same time, I tell them that the Quran itself teaches us to be inquisitive, to look at nature, to look at the universe, to think about, the creation in that sense. So they can relate, perhaps, the Quran with this whole education process. So I don't know whether I've answered the question, but basically that's my take on higher education. And I ended up in higher education by accident. I did my degree in engineering. I didn't like my course because, like Ruby said, if you're good in science or whatever, you have to take up engineering. So that's what I did. And I wanted a scholarship to go overseas, and it was during the, financial crisis. So that's why I took up the scholarship to study engineering. Alhamdulillah, I completed. Then I came back, I wanted to pursue religious studies. My parents were a bit afraid. Said, were you radicalized in the UK and then coming back, you want to pursue religious studies? So perhaps I had this misconception. But alhamdulillah, I completed my master's at UIA in Hadith studies. And then I went to pursue my PhD. I studied under Abdullah Said, who is a Quranic expert, who some might label as a liberal. So, so they're thinking, they're trying to, label me as, either a liberal or what do you call it, a traditionalist. It's a bit difficult to label myself anyway. So I think that whole process of studying, and I didn't work. I ended up in UIA because I was offered a position there. So that's how I ended up in IIUm. And as Ruby mentioned, I served at the Ministry of Education as the principal private secretary to the minister at the time, Mazdi Malik. So I had some insights into policy making and also into, the bureaucracy at the ministry, etc. And I'm also attached to the Office of Director, so I can see that there are indeed various issues with higher education in Malaysia that we need to solve.
Thank you so much, Adli. I think using your own experience is really, really relatable. I feel like the problem with this either-or mentality, so if you're a good science student, it is as if you can never be enamored by stories or literature or philosophy. And I think that is our tendency to just put everyone in a box instead of allowing students and learners to wander and wander around. So thank you very much for that. And I love that do your students ask you directly, or why are we studying Introduction to Quran? And they wanted to know why, as if they need to have a justification that is rational enough for them to stay there, because cutting frogs would make sense. It does, I'm sorry. That is because they save lives. My uncle is a doctor. But they want something that makes sense right away. Instant gratification, yeah. All right, so thank you so much. So now maybe we move to Sarah, who may enlighten us with insights from a private university and also as a student yourself.
All right. Enlighten is a big word. But I'll share my experiences. If I'm being very honest, when I came in to do my PhD, I had a very idealistic image of what a university should be and what it is. So I'll share my idealistic view first. I thought universities are spaces that does two fundamental things. It enables you to look at yourself critically and to look at the world critically. And I thought it's a space where it kind of facilitates you to think critically about the past, the today, and thereby how to move forward later. And that means to kind of discuss and be critical of what we have been taught thus far until you enter university. But what I experienced was something completely opposite of that. What I experienced in the university, and something that I still go through in the classrooms, which I try to challenge in my own ways, is a classroom that tells you you're not trying to teach your students to be critical of themselves or critical of the world, but rather to conform within the existing narrative of what is normal, what is successful, what is productive,
etc., etc., etc. So I am at the Center of Sustainable Development, so I'll just, right now, so I'll just take an example from there. We are not, the curriculum is not designed in a way that enables you to question what sustainable development is. It just teaches you how to adapt to what is already defined as the way to move forward. It doesn't give you the space to challenge it, nor does it give you the knowledge to exploitation, because that's the more easy way to go. For whom is another question. But I feel that universities today, based on what I've observed, maybe in private universities it's more intense than in public spaces, because private universities tend to work very closely with the industry in order to be relevant in society. And that means that the pressure of aligning a curriculum to the needs of the industry is extensive. So this is the dilemma of my idealistic image of the university and what I observed and what I'm unfortunately forced to work within, but I fight against every day.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I think that is perfect because I'm also an English lecturer, actually. I teach in Methodist College. So we have that dilemma. I want my students to be free and to express themselves, but not too much so that we'll get in trouble. So every time I teach something a bit radical, right, please check the window, nobody's passing. So as if we are like doing a black market knowledge. Okay. So yeah, so thank you so much for that. And what about you, Prof. Munirah? Maybe when you were younger, right, what do you think a university should be like?
Well, when I was younger, I was lucky because I didn't study here. I was in the 80s. I went to the United States, and my experience was completely different compared to what I see students today. However, students in the West today are probably undergoing a similar transformation, which is the fault of the corporatization of universities. And this is the problem, it's a global problem. It's not just in Malaysia, and that is affecting how the curriculum is designed, how we define concepts that used to mean something else in the 1980s. For example, yeah, the purpose of a university, I would say, still is, and maybe it's becoming more idealistic, is a space to allow us to debate contentious issues, a space to allow us to be critical of what is considered normal, not to normalize what is considered outrageous. So, you know, normalization can be looked at from different angles, but what's happening today at the university is we are normalizing, in the context of Malaysia, we are normalizing mediocrity. And in this sense, we're doing it by, on the one hand, lifting curriculum that we think is of a higher standard. From my field, for instance, in international relations, every syllabus I've looked at from my colleagues has reading material that hail from either the UK or the American authors, American academics. Concepts like realism. We teach it, but I find that students don't relate to it. Because theories in international relations that are lifted or exported to our context do not consider issues of religion, for instance, that play a very important role in how countries interact. Because the global north and the, I'm not going to say global south, it's the majority south. Okay, we are the majority south. We are the majority of nations that seem to want to look up to the West when their theories actually don't apply here, yet we teach them. Very often I have submitted my syllabus. We have to be, our syllabi have to be vetted by the head of department and the dean. It has been sent back numerous times because I have put in a 1905 book for students to read. The very fact that we are not interdisciplinary also is a travesty in universities. Why shouldn't an IR student read history? It's very important. If we know the history of why the United Nations was formed and how there is an underlying racism in the formation of the United Nations, we can actually figure out the current world order. But no, we're not supposed to teach that because MQA and UK, well, yes, UKM, I taught there, okay? The head of department says it's too old. We cannot include such old books, and also it's not IR related. We are not also encouraged, whether they are the students or the educators, we are not encouraged to be discerning of different viewpoints. It's considered, well, this is what Clausewitz says. Again, this is from IR. Or this is what Marx says. I mean, even the very thought of saying the word Marx in class, you know, it upsets people. It upsets. There's a lot of whispering that goes on. You know, so it's the environment is very close-minded, or rather, I wouldn't say close-minded. It's very ignorant environment. We think that a classroom is a space for students to ask questions because they genuinely want to know something that's confusing to them. But when they do ask, I've actually experienced a fellow educator saying, no, that's too sensitive. We're not supposed to discuss that. This issue of sensitivity in the public university, because it brings up a discourse on race or ethnicity or religion. Why not? Because the student is asking a question not because he or she wants to go leave class and throw a tantrum on the streets and placate and demonstrate. It's a genuine discussion. Why not? But you know, with your further questions, we can get into the answers to that. But I think, if I may, my final statement about the purpose is based on my own personal experience. The purpose of the university is also not to educate just the students and to create critical thinking students. It's to also educate the educators who don't seem to understand that you are there to learn about life and not learn about how to make a living. You know, that distinction is not clear. Life or livelihood, it is not clear. So we can get into more philosophical discussions, but it falls dead on these minds. So, I mean, I have a very positive view of the book that, you know, it's upbeat and we have some solutions, but on the other hand, it's also a very depressing next 10 to 20 years. And if I live past 20 years, I don't know if there can ever be a solution to this this mental, this problem of the mind that we're having, which seems to gather at our public university.
Thank you so much, Prof. I think, I got a bit triggered about the MQA requirement because I got asked every year, Ruby, can you change to a new book? Because this book was published in 2020. And I'm like, what about the... Oh, because it's 5 years. So it's within 5 years. And then nobody has ever asked why 5 years. Just change it. So that I never used the book that was written in the cost structure. I use whatever book that I can find. But it's just basically lying to the authorities because they decide whether or not your college or your institution is deserving to teach. Yeah. So I wonder, that is the dilemma I feel. And of course, the discrepancy between teachers and educators and the people who decide the policies. And unfortunately, in Malaysia, I feel like the people who decide the policies are not educators or have or lacking in the sense of education. So my next question will be, and I think the three of you have touched on this before, students' voices, students' sense of curiosity, students' sense of being critical about society. And I do agree with you, Prof, that our students are very curious if they feel safe enough with us in a class. If we allow and if we make them feel, okay, this is a safe space, this is a place for you to ask questions and discuss issues, even if you disagree with each other. So I think it is our job as educators to do that. But then thinking in the context of higher education in Malaysia, how can the university provide a safe space for diverse voices, be it students or educators? Because I feel like for students, they would follow what the lecturers are doing. If the lecturers allow for it, they feel okay, they can do it. If the lecturers don't really encourage it, they will then not be so openly critical and things like that. So how, as a person in your position, because you may be a lecturer in your own class, but you can also hold like different positions like Sarah in your center. And then, so then how would you, first, how do you then provide these spaces as an educator? And how do you think the university, I'm just going to say management, I hate the word, but how do you think the management can also encourage that? And if they don't, what would be the consequences? And what are the problems there? And you mentioned solution, Prof, but if we have time. But if you don't have time, it's okay. But what is the problem of not allowing these spaces for diverse voices? We can start with Sarah? Oh, sorry. Yeah, Sarah. Yeah. Go.
Student voices as well as academic voices?
Yes, so diverse voices. Basically, because we have students who resist and then lecturers who also resist the system.
Yeah, okay. I can only speak on the basis of my experience. So, based on my experience, when I went against the system, there was no support from the top of the hierarchy for me to resist. What I felt was misconduct in the system. And what I saw is that in order to protect the name of the university, the top of the hierarchy is willing to do anything to protect the name of the university. And that also means silencing anyone who tries to say that what is happening is wrong. And I think this is something that within the systems that I've worked in, this is something that applies to academics, students, and anyone else in that system for that matter. No, because there's people beyond academics and students within the system. So there is no space, in my experience, maybe in small corners, like when I was a PhD student in the safe zones of a quiet pantry. We debated things that we couldn't speak out loud about with people who needed to hear these things. But even in the classrooms, I'll give you a dilemma in my classroom. I create a space where students can say anything and ask anything, and I do the same. But the problem is, our classes are recorded. And because it's recorded, physical classes are recorded. And that means students are afraid because whatever they say, whatever they ask is permanently in the recording. right? So that creates a dilemma where there's another obstacle to in the classroom to be critical. So sometimes, like, I have to speak to the mic. So sometimes the mic away when I want to say something directly. But then, yeah, so I have to kind of deal with these dynamics in the classroom. And it kind of directly show to the students, oh, if you want to be open, if you want to say something that nobody will find it a problem, then okay, sure, you can say it to the mic. So essentially, the message that's being sent in the classroom is that don't be critical, because we don't know who's going to hear this recording. And yeah, Prof, you are making me say names.
Prof, you know where she works, Prof. So just link it without endangering her.
No, I'm not afraid of that. It is in my current university in Sunway. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm horrified actually.
Actually, the reason for the classes being recorded is because they are hybrid classes. So you have the students who are joining in the classroom and students who are joining online. So for the sake of the students who are joining online, the sessions are also recorded. So this creates a complexity where you're afraid to speak in public because you know how easy you can get cancelled these days, right? For saying the inappropriate things. So it creates fear in the classroom, and based on what I've seen in private universities, I used to always get disappointed by the almost negligent level of critical consciousness in the universities, and political consciousness in the university spaces. I used to think, why aren't we talking about things that are happening in the world? Why are we like existing in the university as if we are like this in this tiny bubble, away from the things that are happening in the world, like removed from the greater events of the world? And then I realized, while personally talking to students, I realized they do have thoughts about what's happening in the world. They do have it. It's just they're afraid to talk about it collectively in the university system because there's no space. We talk about sustainable development and the sustainable development goals, but dialogue, if it doesn't conform to what is acceptable by the management, then sorry. That's the reality I've seen.
If I can just continue, and I think, Azima, you will agree with what I'm going to say. There is a constant feed from primary, secondary, and school into university about this fear or lack of willingness to question or to ask, to participate in dialogue. It could be a suppression of self-confidence from day one when you get to primary one. But, we're not dealing with the elephant in the room here, and this is why I want to turn the conversation around or redirect it. Political interference in education. That's basically what has been going on, and it persists. And politics has no place in education. It should not have a place in a university education because it stifles creative thinking and critical thinking. We have this problem in universities at the public university level. Management, for instance, politics decides who heads the universities. And through our culture of cronyism, we know who will head the university. And it's very difficult to speak up against a system that is highly politicized because you know what would happen. So if you're a young, impressionable student, or even a young academic, you check yourself. There's a lot of self-censorship. Some people like me, we learn how to navigate the system by using different expressions. We try not to say things directly. We hint a lot. We are sarcastic a lot. But, you know, it takes effort to do that. And if you don't mind being put in cold storage, not being promoted for 20 years, then you're a happier person. And I guess I am a happier person for that. But the point is to not bring up this issue of political involvement in how a university is run. I guess we are now getting into the autonomy issue. Autonomy, and it doesn't mean complete academic freedom also, but autonomy to manage and run a university. We don't seem to have that because we have political appointees at the top management level. And this is affecting how departments are run, who is promoted, who is not promoted, who is recognized for mediocre work, and who is not recognized for extremely scholarly work. So this is the problem. We discuss it in the book. Of course, the first part, which is about soul searching and political will, this is basically, it actually sets the premise for the discourse in the entire book, which is basically about how to recognize and admit, point out the elephant in the room, which is politics, and whether we have elected officials who have the political will to tackle this problem. Right now, today, Saturday, 13th of December, I would say no, we don't have the political will. But it helps to keep nagging and talking about it, because eventually things might change. There's AUKU, there's legislation that is draconian, that affects everyone's emotions when they get to the university. They don't want to talk, they don't want to sway from what is said in the syllabus. They don't want to involve students who might ask sensitive questions. I was at a meeting, I won't say where. I was at a meeting, an official meeting, which was discussing foreign students at the graduate level. And one lecturer went through a list of I'm going to say their because I won't say male or female, their list of supervisees, PhD supervisees. One was from Nigeria. And the entire meeting room started chuckling. Now this to me is immature, it's racist, because we were talking about that student's grades and his not attending too many classes, but at the same time producing good papers and good presentations. But there was a chuckle, and there was, a joke made about this student. Other students from other countries, no jokes, no chuckling. But this one from Nigeria was the butt of all jokes. So, of course, I made a comment, and I'm already in cold storage anyway, so I'm able to make lots of comments. But this is what we're dealing with at a university level, at a postgraduate program level. So, there's so many problems vis-a-vis AUKU and Act 605, and these are draconian legislation that we keep talking about that need to be repealed. There are baby steps being taken, but they don't translate into the bigger picture of freedom to think and to debate on critical issues affecting society.
I want to add something as well. As I was reading through the book, I was also thinking that I think one of the other biggest obstacles, other than the political aspect, is also economic survival of universities that boils down and kind of forces decisions from the top down. Yeah, I thought I'll get into the conversation.
Yeah, but it's very interesting, economic survival. Does the government not have money is my question. But, it's a rhetorical question, everyone that doesn't...
Well, my question is, the Ministry of Higher Education, as well as MOE, has their budget increased every year. So what are we talking about?
Apparently, according to the inflation, I think this is something I read in the book, right? It's not.
I
it's
know,
not.
I know who you read, and I also disagree with him, but I have no time to send in a letter to that comment. But the point is, the budget keeps increasing. Where does the money go? We're not making any headway. So we're still, anyway, we'll get to the ranking later.
Yeah, actually, I just want to go to Adli, right? So, oh my God, can I say? Because you work in IIUm, which is an international university, but it's an Islamic international university. Diverse voices cannot be held because people come from different places. So, how then you practice providing diverse voices, and what from the top and from your students' level, how is that practice being manifested? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Ruby. Perhaps I'm more pragmatic compared to Sharifah and also Sarah in that sense. When it comes to student voices, especially in IIUm, at least in my own space, in my own class, I do encourage them to question and to be very critical. But I'm afraid to say that students these days, they do not question. When you enter class, you teach them, they take everything at face value. They think whatever the lecturer is, teaching them is something which they have to accept. So sometimes you as an instructor, as the course instructor, you are the one who needs to spark that curiosity in their minds. So I think this is the role of course instructors and lecturers in their own respective classrooms. And I like you mentioned just now, like black market, what you mentioned just now, yeah. Perhaps Rabiah also has the same experience. I don't know at IIUm. But I always consider my class as a safe space for my students to, ask questions and also for me to teach at the same time. So far, I have not encountered any problems except for one instance because we have the student feedback survey, SFS, where students can comment about the lecturers. So one of the students said that I'm being too liberal. So whether that's a good thing or bad thing, that's another question. But I mean, that was the only, I'm not sure whether to take that feedback positively or negatively anyway, but there was that comment from that student, which I appreciated in a sense, so perhaps, I sparked something in his mind, curiosity and stuff. And also at the International Islamic University in Malaysia, I think the management has been quite open to the Academic Staff Association. I don't know whether Rabiah will agree with me or not. We are included in the Senate, so we have a representative of ASA, Senate. So hopefully we can play our role as well. And then we have also the JCC, Joint Collaborative Council with other associations. And then we're also involved in the University Research Committee, Safety and Health Committee. So that's why Rabiah has so many meetings to attend as the president of the Academic Staff Association. So we are in a way involved in decision-making processes, yeah. And so far,
How is your decision making with Soleha Yaakob?
that perhaps Rabiah can explain further because ASA issued a statement on that. I think I can share with you that the university has established an academic inquiry panel, and we have actually, the panel has called her twice, but she did not turn up due to health reasons. So we'll see whether she will turn up on the third time. Anyway, we won't go into that issue. But yes, ASA issued a statement on that, asking the university to take some action, against Professor Saleh for that, for the comments or statements that she made. But here then we have to balance between academic freedom on one hand, and what we think is outrageous being said by academics. So navigating that is sometimes quite difficult as well. So in the case of the International Islamic University, I don't know whether members of my university who are here might have the same view or not, but I think there is, to a certain extent, that openness and that celebration for diversity. I remember even when Tan Sri Zul was the rector and I was the president of the Academic Staff Association, I disagreed with him on various issues, sejahtera or whatever, and I said that publicly, and no action was taken against me, alhamdulillah. So I think like Sharifah said, sometimes we have to find ways to navigate, sometimes be sarcastic, sometimes, find ways that don't land you into trouble perhaps, and I think we need to encourage student voices, and I think that is the role that we have to play.
If I may just continue with the this person's article who quoted The Onion. Look, UM had agreed to look into the article and agreed that mediocre publication should be removed. So the article, supposedly, we the public was supposedly made to believe that the article would be retracted. But as I checked at the beginning of last week, the article is still up there. It's still a major, massive embarrassment to UM. And also, it is classified as a Scopus level journal. Yes, it's Scopus Q1. And on the international advisory board of the journal, editorial board, there are at least a couple of world-class Islamic historians from the US, one from the UK, one from the US. So why is this happening? The retraction hasn't happened, hasn't taken place. Although they have issued a statement to the press saying that they will look into it. So this foot dragging is tarnishing the image of universities. So it's not that educators are not aware of it. We are speaking up, at least a few of us are. But there isn't an outcry, a general outcry among the majority of educators. In fact, there's apathy, I would say. So this is the problem we grapple with.
Okay, I think I'm gonna just go to the last round because I want to open up the floor to questions. So the last one, I think I'm just going to combine a few things together, but mainly because we're talking about journal publications and how publish or perish is the way to go for a lot of academics who want to climb the, can I say, not intellectual, the career ladder, the KPIs and all that. So the thing is there academic imperialism in our universities, and how severe has it infected the spirit of our intellectualism in Malaysia? Because I was discussing with Prof Farid, I think a few days ago, of how we try to follow the Western standards, but then our universities are nothing like the Western universities. And that is the conundrum that we are facing. So what sort of academic imperialism do you think that we are suffering from, and what are the problems that stem from that issue? So maybe we can start from Prof Munirah. Maybe we can start from you. Yeah, Sarah. Okay, Sarah. Yes. No, it's okay. But then because the three of you, I'm sure, publish actively. But then, do you feel, because we are partaking in it, I'm partaking in it, still submitting, yeah. But then, yeah. So how do you grapple with it? Yeah.
All right. I think I mentioned earlier about the corporatization of universities. Okay, I may not answer this specifically in terms of intellectual imperialism, but the power play between what universities, or rather companies, in the West, such as QS, THE, ARWU, these are ranking companies that parade themselves as pursuing academic excellence globally. They are actually profit-making businesses. There's nothing questionable about that. I mean, it's not confusing at all. These are companies out to make money from universities who take part in the ranking business, in the ranking exercise. So I would say this is an imposition of the neoliberal economic system, that order, that we are accepting wholesale. I'm not saying to be ranked or not to participate in some sort of competition is a bad thing. I'm not saying it is completely bad, but we are taking part in ranking without questioning what it all means for how it boils down to affecting how we teach, how we assign reading material, how we question the grading system. And when I say it needs to be reformed, yes, the minister, when we visited him, he said, definitely, we will look into the ranking. We must attend to that. It's been, I don't know, more than a year, almost 2 years. At least have a, what do you call it, a working panel, have some working committee to look into how we can find alternatives. Even that's not being done. We suggested in the book, there are alternatives. But let's get down to business and find them. Instead of forever criticizing it, but having no solution in sight. So to me, this is a complete imitation. We are imitating what is being dished out to us without considering that it doesn't jive with the way, with our level. It doesn't jive with AUKU, it doesn't jive with 605. It doesn't relate to our outlook on what an education should be, what excellent education means. There are many journals that we write in and publish in, which are not Q1, which are not Scopus, but nevertheless of good quality because it's in the context of our lived experience in our multiracial society. But if it's not accepted by a Q1 journal, it is not considered as linking with your KPI and your promotion exercise. So I don't see why we should not discuss it, because it's something that's very important and it affects not just the university, but it affects society. Why can't a journal in I wouldn't say in UM because we already discussed that, but a journal in a local university should be publishing relevant material, whether it is Scopus level or not. Do we have a vetting system that is able to decide, to discern whether a Scopus material, a Scopus level journal is actually of high quality? As we know from Soleha's article, it isn't necessarily of good quality. So that mindset, we are still trapped in that mindset, and educators ourselves are not talking about it. So I'm hoping the book it's exposing these educators who don't talk about it.
I see ranking as a very giant structure that not only influences actions within the university, but also in the greater public. So when you ask students how do they decide on a university, they refer to ranking, right? And then universities then think that we need to get students in order to survive, and students look at ranking, so we have to fight for in the ranking. And I've been in a university, I will not say the name, that had a dedicated team developed for QS ranking. And this university had a huge budget just to get data from QS ranking in order to know exactly how to compete within the QS ranking. Essentially, it's a game, right? To me, it has nothing to do with quality. It's about, here's the game, play it, right? And yeah, it's about money, and how having more money means having more access to that system to know how well to play that game. And so it's just about who has more money and who can then manipulate this system to get to the higher ranking. And then it boils down to KPIs from the upper management all the way to the academics. And each of these levels is supposed to report to the next level on how well they've performed in this metric, right? And so for me, what I've seen is that, I think in my book, I refer to it as the neoliberal currency. Every action you take that aligns to the metrics of the ranking system gives you a currency to influence things within the academic system. At least that's the illusion. You think that the more you play to the tune of the game, the more freedom you will have to make decisions within the system. But that's a lie, it's an illusion. But it determines aspirations within the system. And I want to say that every academic is critical of the system, but in my view, I don't think it should be a personal responsibility. I also think it should be a collective structural responsibility. Because if not, we are going to blame individuals. Or you didn't think of it this way. Whereas for me, I think this whole structure should think of it critically and influence the process. Yeah, that's my experience.
Well, why can't we imitate as well many universities in the West that have extricated themselves from the ranking? Yet we don't imitate that part. If we want to have a captive mind and imitate, why not imitate those universities? But yet we're not studying that. You know, we're not forming panels of to evaluate how it's done and the fact that they've done it. Well, one way to influence the public in decisions of sending their children to universities is to encourage, you know, lecturers in each of these public universities to be publicly well known. Encourage them to be public intellectuals, right? You know, so that the public knows who they are. I mean, I can see a few in the room already. There's Farish, there's Prof. Murad, you're there. And of course, somebody like me who's still coming up, we are known to the public, but we are also academics. We are also scholars. Why don't we do it that way? To raise our level of, to spread our knowledge out to the public so that parents know who we are. We've come from UM or UKM or, I don't know where you studied, but you've taught at UM. And you as well. The point is, it does depend on individuals as well. In the context of Malaysia, that's all we have. We don't have a community of intellectuals. We don't have a community of scholar activists. We just have a straggling few here and there. But one way to do it is to make that connection between the university and society by participating in popular writing.
Yeah, thanks, Ruby. I think you mentioned about the publish or perish culture, which I think I would like to touch upon. I remember I even questioned the university when they made it a graduation requirement for students to publish. Because when I did my PhD, there was no such requirement for me to publish before I graduated. But now it has become a norm for most public universities in Malaysia that in order for you to graduate, you have to publish. And normally, they will require you to publish with your supervisor. You put your, supervisor's name on the paper. I find that very troubling. A few times, I went through the works of my students, and I didn't want my name to be there. Yeah, I insisted that I didn't want my name to be there. But somehow or other, some of them just put my name without even informing me, and then the articles being published, then I scratch my head anyway. But I think that is a very, that's a problem that we should address. This issue of publish or perish. And I echo what Munirah said. Q1, Scopus, WOS. If you ask me what's Q1, Q2, what's the difference between them, honestly, I do not know. Because I don't play the game. But many people do play the game. Yeah? So many people get into the game, and indeed ranking is also a game in a sense, in a way. And this issue of publication is indeed a game. And we know that the publishers, Elsevier and all these publishers, they are money-making entities. And they charge exorbitant fees for you to publish articles. Yeah, few $100, 1,000, even ringgits. Yeah, to publish. So I find it, very disturbing. It's a very disturbing fact. And sometimes you review articles for these journals who charge others, and you don't get a single cent. Yeah. So they exploit academics in a way as well. Yeah, we don't get anything. Perhaps we get an appreciation letter, and then they charge authors hundreds or thousands of ringgit to publish. So, do we have a way to solve this?
Well, the other problem that I have personally seen throughout my career is that it's wonderful. It's always an announcement in any meeting when a lecturer says, "Oh, I currently have 20 PhD students I'm supervising." I mean, quantity is wonderful for these people. How can you supervise 50 to 20 per academic year? Some professors have that for their entire career. So I, on the other hand, 3 or 4. So this is quantification in a university is worship as opposed to quality. So this is the mindset that needs to change, and it is part and parcel of the ranking problem, quantity.
Yeah, and I also want to add that a new phenomena that has come into university is contractual labor, and people who are on short-term contracts, 1 year, 2 years, and etc. So the ranking system affects them differently because they're in this pressure that if they want to have their contracts renewed, then they have to play the game in a very specific way and compete, hyper-compete. Yeah.
So I think that really touches on what is the purpose of university for people working in it and for people who are getting an education from it. So I will not even conclude. I think I will just open the floor to questions. We have one from Prof. Farid and one from the gentleman there, and one from that. Okay, so we'll start with Prof, then the gentleman in grey, and then the gentleman with a beret, and then. But is there a mic? Yeah. Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'll try to be very brief. I think it's really an excellent book. Although Ivory Tower, more like a rotting plywood tower. But I know of course, we have to use, we can't be so nasty. But all the problems discussed in the chapters are big problems and should be researched in detail as projects on their own. And I'm mentioning that because it happens that Sarah and I are working on a project dealing with one of the issues mentioned, which is coercive co-authorship that Adli mentioned just now. Yeah, which is a terrible injustice. It's a form of academic exploitation. And it's surprising that a practice that is regarded as academic dishonesty is mandated by our public universities. That's a terrible thing. The other issue which Munirah mentioned is plagiarism. Right now I'm talking to a student, an ex-student, who is a victim of plagiarism, and it concerns 2 public universities in Malaysia. It's dragging on, and I'm interested to follow follow this to the end. And that's just 2 issues: coercive authorship, plagiarism, and there are a host of other problems which the book deals with. But I wanted to actually make a suggestion based on what you were saying about all of you, especially Munirah, talking about activism. I am more pessimistic about the possibilities for change coming from the top. I think politicians, the ministries of education, the Ministry of Education is reluctant in most cases, not in every case, but in most cases, to appoint proper people as vice chancellor who understand academic culture. They don't have to be academics themselves. They can be people from the corporate sector, but who are good administrators and who make the effort to understand academic culture and appoint the right people as deans and heads of department, right? That's what we need. And I think they're reluctant because the appointment of vice chancellors are mainly political appointments. And the ministers are unwilling, the ministers of education, of higher education, unwilling to interfere with the bureaucracy of the ministry. They themselves are unwilling to deal with MQA, in spite of MQA, as you have said, having ridiculous rules, right? Such as no publications more than 5 years old and all that stuff. So what I want to suggest, and maybe suggest to Gerak, years ago, about 10 years ago, I tried to get students to organize a national conference of students in Malaysia. about the problems of higher education. I'm not successful in getting the students on board. Right? But I wouldn't give up on that. I think maybe an organization like Gerak can help to mobilize this. Maybe work with student associations in different universities in Malaysia, including Sabah Sarawak, and organize a national conference, sponsored or co-organized with Gerak, dealing with all the questions, problems that are discussed in the book as well as others. Because I think the change will only come from below. When there's pressure from students and prospective students, and when they feel that these problems are made known to the public and it may affect enrollment of international students, then I think they may begin to become serious, because they really care about the international reputation of universities. Already Nigerian students, I know Nigerian students who studied in Malaysia, who are telling their compatriots in Nigeria not to go to Malaysia because of the racism against African students. Now, if this kind of thing becomes, all these problems of our universities become well known nationally and internationally, then the minister, the vice will start to take, because it affects their own livelihood.
Okay, thank you, Prof. So, are you done?
No, but
Yeah, so long, Prof. I respect you so much, but so long. Okay, I'm gonna give the mic to Farish first, because he asked to ask a question earlier.
Thank you. Unfortunately, I feel as if we are talking about the patient, and the patient is already dead. You know. But let me just throw something else at you. Instead of producing productive workers that are suitable for the needs of the market, I think even earlier, from the 40s and 50s, from the 50s onwards, there was an underlying assumption, not only here but across Southeast Asia, that the university is the factory of the middle class. Yeah? And the middle class is important because the middle class is the bulwark that keeps the status quo. You need a statist middle class, what Romo calls a statist bourgeoisie, right? Now, my question is this. I think the university is dead, frankly, yeah? As an institution. Sorry, but because if you look at Indonesia, where I am now, the middle class is dying. It's shrinking at an alarming rate. And yet there's a disconnect, because you have a proliferation of universities, both state and private, endlessly producing hundreds of thousands of graduates every year, who will not have middle-class jobs, because all these middle-class jobs, lawyers, accountants, financiers, will all be taken over by AI very soon. So our universities are not equipping our students and training them for what's about to happen within this decade. Yeah. So then the very survivability of the university is at stake. So when you ask these questions, right, I think we need to be blunt here. All the elites of the post-colonial South, the ones that were on the Western Bloc, have all bought the Kool-Aid of the liberal economy. So whether it's in South Asia, Southeast Asia, it's the same. So this developmental paradigm, why is it not questioned? They don't want to question it. That's the whole point. We don't question the genesis of the idea of development because we don't want to problematize it. We just want to teach it. So you have then this earlier contradiction, or not a contradiction. You have this earlier situation where all the post-colonial states, many of those that were aligned to the West, bought into the whole liberal capitalist model. That's the paradigm. So the university produces the liberal capitalist middle class. Now the problem is today, that's not going to happen because of the advancement of technology. So we've reached post-industrial late capitalism now. And the university that they built in the 60s now can't cope. But it's still doing all these things that are torturing you guys, I know, KPIs and all that, because the logic hasn't changed. So there's always this inertia before they deal with the reality. So going back to Said's point about students organizing, I think it's more than that. I think we have to show that the university is not the only place where we learn, because learning, as we know, takes place anywhere and everywhere. So although I'm sad to see what's happening to the universities, I don't think we need to be that pessimistic, because as we know, we have a very inquisitive younger generation who are also deeply anxious about their future because they are more connected to it than their parents. They can see that They're not going to have middle class lives. They're not going to have middle class jobs. They're not going to be able to own a house. And if the university as an institution cannot answer that, they'll seek answers elsewhere. So perhaps this is where, we as educators need to figure out, okay, this is nice to preserve the university as a nice old attractive building, but the building doesn't make you think. The building doesn't make you think. You don't think in concrete, right? Now, that thinking culture, that critical culture that we want, can actually be generated elsewhere, including places like this. Sorry, not a question, more a comment.
Okay, so I'm just, so before I take more questions, I would like to invite the panels to respond to either Prof. Farid or Farish. I'm going to take, there will be second and third rounds of questions. Yes? Both Fs, yes. F and F. F to F. Oh, Prof. Farid is not listening to my joke.
Okay. If I may comment, just in general, organizing a conference, I think Gerak did that in USM once, long time ago. SM Idris was there. Well, anyway, I wasn't around, but conference on
USM. Students' conference.
Not a student. Yes.
Abba is Hussein Alatas. Please use Proya.
Okay. Yeah, organizing conferences. You're right. The problem is we do not have the. We have a very apathetic teaching component that have populated the entire public university system. So how do we get the students on board when you have deadbeat lecturers who climb all the way to the top and become emeritus professors as well? So, I mean, Farish is partly correct in saying that we have fancy buildings. Do we need them? But you teach in a fancy building too, in Indonesia. Huh? No, in Indonesia. It's brand new. Okay, well, when I was there, it was shining. So in 2 years, it has fallen apart. Okay, the point is, conferences, we need to organize them. We need to also involve more public discourse. And I think there's a lot of public discourse as far as the schools are concerned. We need to also create more discussion about the universities and the rot it's going through. But it has to come from the people who are living the experience, which are people like you, and me. Well, I'm retired, but I'm still speaking about it. Somebody like me will find it will be very difficult. I have a lot of obstacles trying to organize conferences. First of all, I'm not affiliated with any institution. I'm independent. So perception is everything among the public as well. If you don't have a professor's title, if you don't have a position in a university, then, you have a difficulty. Whereas the younger generation, you guys are still teaching, you're affiliated. Let's look to them. But good luck in getting, as I said, there are stragglers among us. Isolated pockets of us who are very concerned. But in general, the general feeling is one of apathy. Can't be bothered.
What I don't understand is why the senior professors don't push back on the ad policy.
We can evoke the Professor Kangkong label that Abba has. Why? I'm joking. I cannot say fine. All these errors. All right. So yes, the Professor Kangkong, senior professors. All right. Adli or Sarah first?
Sorry, I'm running a whole debate in my mind based on what Prof. Farish said.
But do you agree that the university is dead, dying, or on the way there?
You know, something I've observed in life is that survival trumps everything, right? And this applies to the academic system on the side of academics as well as students as well. I know ideally, I want the university to be a system where the academics at an individual level are critical and students at an individual level are critical. But when I speak to my students and when I speak to academics, what I hear are a lot of fears about survival. And to expect, some of us have maybe certain privileges where we don't have to worry about the next paycheck, for instance. But, and what I often hear from academics is that the reason why they may not stand up is because they're afraid they will lose a job, and they're afraid that they will not get another job in an economy where there are no jobs. And for students, it's about, if I speak against this system, will it affect my degree, which will then affect my ability to get a job? At the end of the day, it kind of circulates around the theme of survival, and which may be the reason why we hear very few people who may be very vocal about it. And I have to say that I was vocal in the system, but I have to also acknowledge that I did have some privileges that allowed me to not worry about my next paycheck. But so this is a reality that I've observed by talking to academics and also students in the system, that as much as I want to critique it, the survival aspect is a core theme amongst everyone in the academic system.
Okay, wait, but I just want to echo that because it is very true. It's about survival. And because the title of the book is very apt. It's Ivory Tower. And I feel like a lot of academics are comfortable in the Ivory Tower, and then they wouldn't want to be public intellectuals at all. Adli, do you have a response to double F? Prof Farid Alatas and Prof Farish.
When I gave this book to my rector, Usman Bakar, I think the first thing that he said, the word Ivory Tower itself is problematic. So he doesn't like perhaps the concept of Ivory Towers or Munirah Gading. I mean, philosophically, perhaps there's an issue with that term in itself. I like Farish's point that he says that the university is dead. I'm not sure whether we can all agree that the university is dead, but I like the idea where he said that learning can happen anywhere, not only in universities. And I remember Osman Bakar mentioning this to me because someone complained to him that people are not reading anymore. He said, traditionally, people may not be reading books, but we should look at reading beyond just reading books. He said even looking at TikTok videos, which are informational to a certain extent, is a form of reading in that sense. Yeah. So things have changed. AI, with the advent of AI, things have changed. So perhaps we have to relook at, and reimagine the university in the 21st or 22nd century and its role in society in that time.
Okay, a note on the Ivory Tower title. Just a minute. Okay, we have Gerak Budaya to thank. I mean, I'm grateful because we had a few titles going with covers as well, but everyone settled on Ivory Tower. But let me give you the history of the term. The metaphor Ivory Tower. Actually, it originated in the 18th century, Europe. It's a romanticized idea of excellence, of wanting to achieve excellence. All right? Post-World War II, it deteriorated into a negative connotation, whereby excluding yourself from society was tied in with self-centeredness, selfishness, wanting to generate profit for yourself. So it has become a negative connotation. So there's a double meaning for Ivory Tower. Now that's your apologetic answer for the book that's already out.
Please don't.
But now, please go ahead.
Oh yes. Okay. Who still have questions? Yeah. Who was? Oh, there. Okay. The gentleman, and then the gentleman in blue, and then Prof Murad. So yeah. So three lah. We take three. Okay. You can also introduce who you are and.
Can you hear me? Okay. First of all, thank you for the book and starting this conversation. I think, or sparking this conversation. I think it's really important, and whenever someone said something that really resonated. My name is Ofure. I'm not from here. I'm part Nigerian. I grew up in South Africa, Tanzania, born in UK. And my mother works at the University of Cape Town, which is one of the hubs of decolonial thought. And personally, I dropped out of university very quickly because I realized it wasn't going to lead me towards the person I wanted to become in the world. And I guess leading to this question, I think it's about what are our values in this world and in society, and how do we actually take action and create a world that protects those values. Because I think a lot of what you've talked about from the humanities doesn't lead to getting a job. Everyone wants engineering and hard sciences, politics, survivability. All these things indicate to me that our society isn't led by humanity. It's led by other forces, whether that's capital, whether that's greed, whether that's fear. We are not leading ourselves. The reason humanities students don't have jobs is because we live in a society that doesn't give them the space to be able to develop the decisions we should be taking, right? Because for me, humanities is about building your thoughts to think about humanity and then go out in the world and teach everyone what direction we should be going towards, right? And the reason, that's obviously a challenge to the powerful structures that we have who want to control the rest of us. And so my challenge even to survivability is that what is the value of survivability if you live a life where anything goes? At a certain point, we have to be willing to die for something. And people who have power and who have money and who live a life focused on profit making, for me, it's they also have a question, a psychological question they have to answer. Why? To what end? What are you achieving in your life, actually? And because for me, the reason I left university, I was in humanities, but it felt like it was kind of a pyramid scheme, because you create knowledge for other people to learn that knowledge and then teach it and disseminate it. But at what point do we do something? At what point do we change the world? At what point do we live better lives?
All right, thank you. Two more. Tak apa. Okay. Prof Murad can ask.
Thank you. In this country, we are in this cauldron for some 40 years. Same thing has been spoken in the 80s in a more subdued way. And when rankings emerge in 2005 or 6, there began to have public criticism in the newspapers. And I was one of the first, actually, to respond to this problem of ranking. To me, ranking is a scam. It's a Macau scam. It destroys scholarship. It monetizes scholarship, and it dissipates the idea of a university. And I've seen so-called Scopus articles that are bad in English, in language, in topics, in methodology. Everything is bad, and they get their papers published. I've been complaining also over the last perhaps 20 years, complaining to various authorities, MQAs, the ministry, the minister, throwing out things and ideas. Nothing seems to happen. But I think we need to play a role in this. We are morally responsible, incrementally, individually, in small groups. We need to voice this out to the powers so that things change. I've done this. I've been critical of in my organization for decades. Nothing seems to happen to me. But I always believe that universities are organized anarchies. Universities are oxymorons. The idea of a corporatist university came to Malaysia in sometime in the mid-80s, when the vice chancellors are expected to be managers. And again, we are misled, and we have been consuming the nomenclature of managing a university. We use the word management to a university. I don't use management to a university. The university is not managed. Who manages a university? It's a place that is not managed. It's an organized anarchy. There's no CEO. There's no, it's not a company. But over the last 40 years, we conceive of universities as companies, and especially the younger academics. And when we talk about companies, we're talking about a corporate culture. We're talking about corporate shirts. I never wear my corporate university shirts. I mean, I have this from two universities, UIA and ISTEC. I'm ISTEC. I'm slightly apart from the campus and the main university and USM, but I never, I just bought it and got it, but I never wear it. So again, this idea of a corporatist value in universities, this managerist view must be expunged from our vocabulary. We cannot use, I don't use universities in terms of associating university with management. There are many connotations, negative connotations. University is not managed. So again, we ourselves must expunge these vocabularies. That's one way to use it. And the other way is, of course, to incrementally, and being morally responsible to populate that ideal to the younger academics. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. The gentleman in blue? Yeah. Behind you. The mic is behind you. Yeah. One more.
Thank you. I have two questions. Malaysian higher education.
Sorry, can you introduce your name to the panelists? Your name, introduce yourself to the panelists, please.
Oh, my name is Ramli. Yeah? All right. Malaysian higher education cannot achieve real quality or global credibility without structural reform that restores university autonomy, protects academic freedom, and recenters the university's social purpose beyond politics, bureaucracy, and rankings. The government's leadership and bureaucracy create major hurdles. With the resources and leadership you have, Gerak, can you truly deliver meaningful change in the next 5 years? Or will these obstacles hold you back? That's question number one.
Farish, you want to mention something?
The question number one, huh?
Yes, so please
Question number
respond.
two. Huh?
That was one.
Question number two. While an NGO like Gerak may have strong intellectual resources and well-researched ideas, acting alone often limits its ability to challenge authorities effectively. Governments and institutions tend to have far more resources, influence, and access to decision-making. To truly make an impact, an NGO like Gerak usually needs collaboration, strategic alliance, public support, and sustained advocacy. Alone, it may raise awareness or offer insight, but its capacity to achieve systemic change is often constrained. Do you have that collaborative network? Thank you.
Only 1 minute, okay? Oh yeah, so sorry.
Just wanted to follow up what my friend Murad said just now about ranking. of rankings that Murad's talking about is actually very real. So you can have prestigious universities whose scientists make chemical and biological weapons of mass destruction, but their rankings don't drop. It's perfectly all right. Because
Number 5, because we have a 5-year election cycle as well. And I don't want to do anything because when you talk about education, there's no such thing as a limit. There's no such thing as saying do it within the next 5 years. Just as how there are useless blueprints that we put out, that the country puts out, is just a rehash of previous blueprints because they're looking at the 5-year election cycle. So I'm sorry, Gerak will probably take your advice as to your second point, which is whether we can collaborate with other like-minded groups. I think we already are indirectly and unofficially. It's just that Gerak has never been actually invited to decision-making situations or meetings or workshops with the ministry ever. So our latest recent in 2004, was it? Or earlier this year, 2004, when we went to see the Minister of Higher Education, it was our effort. It was our initiative. It wasn't that they are reaching out to us. They will never reach out to us. So this is the route we will take. And it is to engineer a public discussion, a very public discussion, as well as draw it out of the educators themselves. Whether it is a question of survivability or not, it's a real question. But I too was in that situation. I too was worried about whether I will be disciplined. You know, as I said, there are ways to navigate it. And you move up the ladder in 20 years, you learn to live with the paycheck that you have. You don't have to think that you will make thousands and hundreds of thousands of ringgit a year. You learn to live with the amount that you are given. You don't value an excessive paycheck because you don't have it. So I think it's a choice you make, it's a decision you make, and you live your life accordingly, if the cause is important enough to yourself. So survivability is there. I mean, I'm not dead. I'm not, dying of hunger either. But I'm not a multimillionaire either. So, you survive the way you have to.
I really like the comment about the values within the university system. When I entered the academic system, I had similar views of the values that the institution should hold. Then I realized that, unfortunately, the culture of the universities sits in the complete opposite of the values that I thought it tries to hold to and disseminate. And I saw the worst ills of the world manifested amongst the academics in the education system. And to say that it broke my heart is an understatement. And but it is important, but unfortunately I did not witness that culture where important values were upheld by the university system. And I understand your decision to leave as a result. I myself left academia for 2 years after having witnessed everything. And in terms of taking action, I took action within the academic system when I was asked to write and publish with others' names on the publications. I went against the whole hierarchy of the system, but starting from the Human Resources Department of the university, my executive dean, my deputy vice chancellor, the owner of the university, they all let me down. And at the end of the day, I was forced into I forgot the name, what it stands for, PIP? What does it stand for? I forgot. Performance Improvement Plan. Yeah, I was forced into a performance improvement plan because I said no to so many things. And I rebelled against what was imposed on me that I should do because I was told that this is not how a young academic should behave. I must do what I'm told to do. And I even brought it up to the Ministry of Higher Education in Malaysia. The case of publication fraud in Malaysian universities. And I sat in a room with, I can't remember, maybe 7 people looking at me in the Ministry of Higher Education, with an added bit of intimidation in the room saying that we know where you work at right now. And I told them that, do you know that Malaysia is in the top 10 of the highest retraction rates in the world? And they were like, oh, really? And these are people who work at the Ministry of Higher Education. So I thought to myself, who should I really turn to voice and to expect change? I didn't know, so I just took it upon myself to do what I can do. That's in terms of taking action, yeah.
Thank you. Adli, last one? Wait,
Yeah, I don't have much to add. Sharifah, Munirah, and Sarah has stolen all the things that I wanted to say. But yeah, the brother mentioned just now that he dropped out of university, and it's an unfortunate case where universities did not meet your expectations in that sense. But as Faris mentioned, learning happens anywhere, everywhere. Yeah? So even though you don't have a university degree, you still continue learning, and that process continues for a lifetime.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. There's no more time because it's yeah. Yeah. Can you take another one? Okay, only 1 minute, sir. If that's okay. If you want to ask something. Oh, you don't have to. Yes. No, please. You don't look it. I'm sorry. Your mic closes.